It's time to huddle up at the Weekly Huddle podcast because draft season doesn't stop, and neither do we. Newt Westen joining you yet again for another summer scouting positional ranking. This time we are focusing on the offensive tackles for the 2026 NFL draft cycle. We're starting to get into the trenches, which is personally my favorite group of players to talk about, both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. So this kicking off that trench talk is a little bit of a happy moment for me as we start to get into some of the big beauties that we have in this class. Before we get going for our list and my ranking, I would like to say, please, if you are enjoying the content and you are returning here from a previous episode, hit the subscribe button. If you're watching along and you like what you see, we would really appreciate that. Any likes or shares beyond that are really, really helpful for us, and we ultimately appreciate your guys' kindness and the attention that you give us. So thank you so much already for listening and tuning in. For the top 10 list, I've got an opportunity to watch only 10 offensive tackles. So as I rank them, this is going to be where I see them currently. However, as I start to watch more film on these guys and more players in general, this list can absolutely move around. Some guys will probably move out from here, and some of the guys might be rearranged as I start to, like I said, get some more games under my belt. But without further ado, let's go ahead and start in with my number 10 offensive tackle, and that is Blake Miller out of Clemson. If you've heard of Blake Miller, that's going to be because his name was pretty popular last draft cycle, right around this time, especially as he was entering his first year of eligibility as a true junior in Clemson's system. He is going to be a player that, because of that prevalence, you're probably going to continue to hear his name a lot throughout the cycle. And with him, he's going to carry some kind of heavy pros and cons to him. So kind of getting into it right away, his athletic ability is probably what put him on the map. He's an extremely good athlete. He has strong hands, and he understands some of the technical pieces of the game, and he is a really good mover for the position. When you have an offensive tackle, you want to see them be able to move well in space because they're going to be on an island, and so Miller's ability to do that is extremely reassuring. Beyond that, he's going to be a player that has logged a ton of snaps. He has over 2,500 collegiate snaps due to the fact that he was a true freshman starter in a premier ACC system. That is an extremely impressive accomplishment and one of the things that's kind of made his name a hot one within draft circles. Now, kind of looking at the negatives for him, he does still need to work on some of his technique. His hand placement, while he has good grip strength, his placement needs some improvement, as well as his footwork. He needs to be able to cover a little bit more with his kick slides. I think he works well with counters and he can get to a point really quickly, but he just needs to clean up some of those technical pieces. But realistically, with Blake Miller, the biggest thing that's going to hold him back is his frame. Now, Clemson has him listed right now at 6'6", 315 pounds. And I'm going to say it right now. If Blake Miller's 315 pounds, then I'm 160 pounds. Because apparently we have changed the definition of what a pound is. In no universe is this guy 315 pounds, or at least playing at 315 pounds. He's a lot lighter than that. I would guess right around 300, if not a little less. That lack of mass is going to be something that is really challenging for him to work with when going and one-on-one reps with defenders. He really doesn't have a strong anchor, and when he's asked to be a dominant run blocker, he has shown flashes of that when he especially is able to get good leverage, but other times he just fails to have the amount of strength required due to less mass in his frame. So with Miller, he brings a high athletic profile to the position, but at the cost of the size that you really want to see at that position. So he comes in, like I said, number 10 for me. Looking forward to kind of how he enters the 2025 season, if he can bulk up and put some good weight on and still retain some of those elements of his game that make him a highly touted prospect in terms of his movement, his athleticism, those things, I think he can move up draft boards. The question is, however, can he do that? I think that's going to be the first thing that I look for to when seeing him this upcoming season. On to number 9, and that's going to be Emil Wagner out of Notre Dame. I don't know why I said Dame. Notre Dame. So with Emil Wagner, just to kind of get it out right away, he also is going to be a smaller statute player. Now, Notre Dame is not hiding this at all. They have him listed at 6'6", 290 pounds. So right away, you're going to see some of the same deficiencies. He's going to lack some play strength due to that slender build. He actually, to me, he almost looks like an edge rusher because of how well he wears that. So he's not necessarily skinny. He's pretty broad in his shoulders, and he looks built very well. He needs to put on just some more weight from a mass standpoint. Like I love his body, as weird as that sounds. I love his body composition and everything, but not for the tackle position. That mass is going to end up killing him. He also does have, again, some poor mechanics with his footwork. He almost seems to be stumbling over his feet at times. And I think just some more refinement and concentration on the kick slides that he's doing, getting some repetition with that, and being very intentional about building that into a subconscious routine to him is going to be a really big aspect. But with that, I do like pieces of his game that he brings. He has a really good use of his hands. I think that his hands show exactly what you want to see out of a tackle. He's got one hand that's able to be up and engaging with the defender, and then another hand where it's able to operate independently and be able to protect from inside counter moves and set up a pass protection plan that keeps defenders on their toes and it doesn't let them necessarily dictate the point of contact. I also think, once again, because he has the build that he does, he is going to be another player that just brings high athleticism to the position. He's able to move fairly well. And while it's probably not necessarily where you'd like to see it, especially given that 290, it's good enough where he's able to, for the most part, keep up in mirror defenders. I really like the speed at which he's able to move into and out of spaces, especially when climbing to the second level in run blocking. I think he does an excellent job of that. So we go on to then my number 8 player, and that is going to be Gennings Dunker out of Iowa. I'm pretty sure it's Gennings Dunker. Bill Sparks corrected me to that, so hopefully I got that one right. But Gennings Dunker is going to be the right tackle out of Iowa. I'm sorry, right tackle out of Iowa. He was kind of a player that splashed on last year after having such a highly graded year via PFF. He actually graded out at a 90.2, which I don't pay attention to a lot with those grades, but anytime you're above a 90 on a PFF scale, it definitely will at least intrigue me a little bit. So I think that's something that is going to be definitely in his favor. When you start to look at him and what he brings to the position, for starters, he's going to be one that I love his build. He's 6'5", and I like that 6'5" for a tackle. You get a little bit more natural leverage from that. Anytime you're 6'6", 6'7", you're having to work for that leverage. So 6'5", I really like that. And then 316, Iowa has him listed at, which is almost picture perfect for a build as far as I'm concerned. So as a player, as an actual film grade, he is a stellar run defender. Kind of what you'd expect from Iowa. They're an old school ground and pound type program, really the Big Ten in general, but Iowa really embodies that. With Caleb Johnson there last year, they were able to do a lot of things. And Dunker was one of the big reasons that they were able to be so dominant, because he set such a good precedence. Now, there's other really good linemen there, but Dunker as a run defender was punishing. When you are a run defender, whether you are tackle, guard, or center, you need to be a mauler. You have to have a mean streak and an aggressive mentality. And Dunker definitely has that. He moves downhill extremely well, and he's extremely aggressive at the point of attack when it comes to run blocking. And with that, he has really good play strength. It does translate into the second level as he's moving, but right off the line, he's able to move defenders and really control the point of attack. More so than just walling them off, he's able to open up holes and do an incredibly good job of giving whoever the running back is a wide lane to run through. Now, for him, the negatives are going to be pass pro. I just did not love him as a pass blocking lineman. I think part of it is the Iowa pass blocking scheme. They run play action a ton, but with that, their linemen are always crashing down away from the play, and it set up but few snaps where you really get the opportunity to see their linemen, especially their tackles, blocking in a little bit more of a traditional sense. And when I did see him, pulling back to his kick slides and trying to create a pocket for the quarterback, he really, really struggled to set a quality anchor within there. Looking at him against Ohio State, he was just eaten alive by Jack Sawyer. And if you look at the game, I think he was only credited with one pressure, but that game, it was really not a pretty game for him. He was constantly dominated, constantly controlled, getting pushed back with ease, and just struggled to be an effective pass blocking tackle against the edge rushers of Ohio State. Now, do credit, Jack Sawyer was an amazing collegiate edge rusher and knew how to attack offensive tackles really well, but you still want to be able to see that ability for him to be an impactful blocker against NFL quality players. So a big thing for him, I think. Some of the pieces that come into that, I do believe, are going to be just his hand usage and his lack of protection for his chest. I want to see him protect his chest and do more to control a defender. I think with that, once again, it comes down to few reps where he really has the opportunity to be a true pass block, 5-7 step drop, pocket protector. So definitely something where I'm looking for him to improve on that element of his game. As long as he just continues to be a lights out run defender, I'm going to love what he brings as a floor, as a just surefire run blocking offensive tackle. As we move on, then, we get to Isaiah Worlds. And this is going to be a player that has probably been up there in terms of like top fives. I know in a couple of the databases that I looked at, he was consistently a top 5 tackle listed. He comes from Nevada. He played 4 years at Nevada, and this year he's transferring to Oregon, which I think is an amazing move for him. Because one of the deficiencies, I shouldn't say deficiencies, but one of the things that's kind of holding him back, in my opinion, is going to be the competition that he played against. In the Mountain West Conference, I really didn't see him dominate competition. He seemed like he was doing a good job in being a successful blocker, but it makes it tough for me to say that, okay, well, this guy is playing Mountain West Conference football at an adequate level. Yes, he's going to be this good of an offensive tackle in the NFL. So I think him stepping up to a premier Power 4 conference is going to give him the opportunity to really showcase his abilities as a tackle. Some of the things that he does really well is going to be pass protection. I think that he has the ability to be a really strong pass blocker, set a really good anchor. Maybe not like the best, but one that you can hang your hat on and say, okay, that's something that we can work with. He is another player that as he moves downhill, he is punishing run blocker. He's going to move players out of the way. And this is kind of where his bread and butter is a little bit more. So a little bit above average pass protection, a little bit above average run blocking. And with that, he's kind of bringing some strength and size to the game. He comes in at 6'8", 309. And with that starts to get a little tall for me, but he actually plays with pretty good leverage despite how tall he can be. But with him, he's going to be a player. While he's okay in pass pro, he can move fairly well in run blocking. He's really not that smooth of an athlete overall. He's kind of a little bit not jittery, but it's almost like robotic as he moves back into his kick slides. I have clunky written down, something that I'd like to see him get a little bit better at, and hopefully you see him getting in that Oregon system. You'll see improvement there. And then with him being 6'8", 309, he does have a little bit of a slender build. And that's kind of the opposite of what you want really for that position. You want to have a little bit more mass on UMP. Not quite that tall, so he's kind of working in the opposite direction as far as I'm concerned. So with that, some things that I think if he can put on some good mass in this next year, if he can clean up some technical pieces, I think he does have a good floor. I question what his ceiling is. I don't know how much more he can do to kind of add that athletic and strength profile to his game to really set himself apart from others, especially, like I said, given how deep and how good this offensive tackle class is. But with that, kind of a tip the cap at him, because he is coming at number 7 on what is a fairly good offensive tackle group. So Isaiah World, Oregon, this upcoming season comes in at number 7. And then at number 6, Spencer Fano out of Utah. So Spencer Fano is one half of the Bash brothers that I'm going to talk about, which are the Utah tackles. He's going to be the right tackle at Utah. And as I talk about these guys, I'm going to try not to talk about them simultaneously, but inevitably I'm going to end up kind of lumping them together because, to spoil it a little bit, I have his teammate Caleb Lomu at number 5, and they are graded fairly close for me. But they're two really different players. So Spencer is a absolute annihilator in the run game. He is that mean streak, that punisher. He is a people mover. He displaces defenders like regularly, and I've seen clips where he moves them out of the frame of the camera view. Definitely something that you want to see, and really shows when you are a serviceable run defender versus a good run defender, are aspects of that. He's got really quick feet. He's going to be one where it's moving in really sharp, rhythmic ways. I think on his kick slide, he's not taking long strides, which I don't love, but his feet are moving very, very quickly, and I think some of that comes down to just the kind of way that he approaches the game. I love seeing active feet. I think it's a really undervalued trait for offensive linemen. It's something that I definitely notice when I see it. And then kind of with the element of him being a really strong run defender, he does have really good play strength. Especially if you take a look at his size, he's listed at 302 pounds and 6'6". Definitely you can tell he's a little bit slimmer. He doesn't necessarily look like he's less than that. I think he is over 300 pounds, but he's definitely not like packing on those extra pounds. So he makes the most of his frame, and he does a good job with that. So if you take a look at why he's the number 6, we have a guy that with this slender frame, he does have some functional play strength, especially as a run blocker, but it doesn't always translate to other parts of the game. It's definitely something where I think he still gives up maybe too often a pass set that a defender is able to knock him off his anchor and push him back more than I'd like to see. I'd like to see that run strength translate a little bit more to his pass protection. And with that, I think he can be, when you're looking to put him in pass pro, he can be a little bit slow. And it does come back to me, the kick slides that I talked about. He's got quick feet, but he's not covering a lot of ground. And with that, he's just a little bit slow to the point, and he's able to get beat by defenders around the arch. So with that, I don't love kind of that element of his footwork. I like the active feet, but I want him to cover a little bit more. I think it puts him kind of in a negative situation, which might be what leads to some of those issues with his play strength. It's not necessarily an issue with strength, but he's just playing a little bit out of position because he's not able to get to his spot quick enough. He's definitely a player that I think if you have a team that is looking at running a man blocking scheme, he's going to be a player that they really, really like because of his ability to be an effective blocker and move people off the line when he has his man in sight. So Spencer Fano comes in at number 6 for me. Before I get to his running mate on the other side of the line, pause really quick to remind you guys to consider subscribing to the channel if you, once again, are enjoying the content. Weekly Huddle podcast is put on by Owen. He does a wonderful job bringing elements of not only NFL draft, but really all things football. It's something that I know he's working on creating and bringing even more content to the channel. So as you're going through this, please, please, please consider hitting that subscribe button, like, comment. We very much appreciate it. But to my number 5, who I've already spoiled with Caleb Lamu. Caleb Lamu is the left tackle at Utah. And I said he's kind of the opposite of Fano because, in my opinion, he is a stellar pass protector. I have written that he's a plus in pass protection. He mirrors defenders very well. It's rare that he gets beat around the arch. He's got a really strong anchor as well, and he's able to utilize the elements of like some leverage. While he's 6'6", he doesn't necessarily have that natural leverage. He knows how to create that leverage and also move. He's able to get down. He's got some good flexibility to him that just creates kind of overall what you're looking for when you want to have a solid pass protecting left tackle. He does have, like I said, a larger frame. He's actually 6'5". Was wrong there, but he comes in at 304. I think he wears that 304 really well. I think he's every bit of that 304, maybe a little bit under that, but he really doesn't play like it. And I think that's one of the biggest differences between some of these guys that are right around that 300 mark is how big are they playing. So he wears that frame very well. And like I said, he's able to be a effective pass protector. The then other side is he's just not that great of a run blocker, in my opinion. I think he has a good technical understanding of the game. He's actually pretty good with like his hand technique. He understands how and where to punch, and he's got a strong punch to him. But he fails to sustain blocks consistently. And he's not a people mover in general. So when you're not able to kind of hold on and wall off a player and you're not moving them off their spot, it just creates too many opportunities where you have a clogged line or a clogged hole that you're not able to give your running back an adequate amount of space to move through. And with that in general, I think that he's shown the ability to kind of progress throughout his time. He's been adding more weight on. Last year he was listed at 290. Last year he was listed at 290. This year 304. So hopefully he's continuing to put on some good weight, create a little bit more of a massive build, and translate some of that good strength and leverage that he has in pass protection to some downhill blocking. But Lomu comes in at number 5 for me. And this is like right around the point where I would say between Lomu And then my next three guys, I think they're all fairly close together. Lomu might be a little bit outside that. So 4, 3, and 2 are all really, really tightly packed together. But definitely, as I alluded to before, a pretty thick and solid, top of this list. So as we go through it, number 4 then is Xavier Chaplin out of Auburn. He was at Virginia Tech for the last 3 seasons, and he is now transferred to Auburn ahead of the 2025 season. So with Xavier Chaplin, he's going to be a massive offensive tackle. And this is kind of where some of the beef starts to come in. He's 6'7", so a little bit taller, but he's 338 pounds, and you absolutely can see that with him. I love seeing that mass, and definitely a tick up for him. He doesn't play like he has that 6'7" frame. I think he generates adequate leverage. I'm not going to call it good leverage, but I think he generates adequate leverage for that frame. So I really, really like that he's able to have that mass and that build and reach, but also be able to be a pretty functional blocker in terms of getting underneath defenders. With him, he delivers the play strength that you'd like to see when you're 338 pounds. He has an extremely strong punch. He'll knock guys off their spot with ease, and once again, he's an asshole when he is in run defense. He is a mauler. He wants to put people in the ground, and he's always looking for that next guy too. So with that, he understands how to move off a spot. He's got a really good understanding of how to sustain blocks and how to finish blockers in the run game. And he is also understanding of how to utilize that mass and that power in terms of how he's going to displace those defenders. But with him, and you see this a lot of times with the bigger offensive tackles, one thing is going to be just his ability to have a consistent coverage of space. He's not as agile as you'll see some of these other pass protectors being. There's too often times he's beaten, especially when it comes to like a stunt or a twist. I don't know if it's a lack of understanding, therefore anticipation, or he's just slow to the point. But there are a lot of times he actually gets beaten by a stunt off the line, and it really exposed a weakness to his game. He also does struggle to maximize the amount of space he can cover. For the most part, the defenders that he was going against that I watched, he was able to handle pretty well. Even like a Donovan Ezeraku, there were only a couple reps he got beat by him, and not even to like a full pressure, but just was kind of beat around the edge, still able to maintain distance between Ezeraku and the quarterback. But it's definitely something where it's kind of apparent. He also then is getting set up for that inside pressure and the inside counter move that can be sometimes a really deadly force if you have a edge defender who knows how to have and set up a really good pass rush plan. That's one thing that worries me about Chaplin is just his ability to consistently cover both inside and outside moves against those edge rushers. But all in all, a guy that I think does an adequate job of moving in space. Like I said, not the smoothest athlete, not the quickest, but does an adequate job. But it's just an absolute wrecking ball when he meets defenders at the line. And then with that, like I said, very closely graded, I have my number 3 player, Francis Mauigoa. The first thing I'll kind of mention about Mauigoa is he has, in my opinion, the best hands of any offensive tackle, I'll say, that I've watched so far. Definitely any player, regardless of position, that is a blocker that I've seen. He understands the technical portion of the game extremely well. Once again, as I said before, with Dunker, he is always, I'm sorry, not with Dunker, Wagner, he has one hand up. He's engaging the defender, setting him up, and he's got another hand free for inside moves. And he's understanding of what he needs to do, how he needs to place his hands in order to be effective and disruptive to that pass rush plan. It was one thing that I actually got an opportunity to tweet out, and Kyle Long, of all people, was great enough to respond and point out also when he's in pass pro, he has really, really good set angle. So the IQ for Maui Goa is one of the better ones that I have seen in this group, and it might not be necessarily from like a natural intellect or just really, really hard work. I think that he exhibits a lot of the technical things that you want to see a offensive tackle putting in, and it's definitely something that raises him to the top 3 of my rankings. Beyond that, he's a really good mover. He comes in at 6'6", 316 again, I believe, 315. But with that, he has that frame that you see a lot of times in that realm of 6'5", 6'6", 305 to 320. Just kind of, I would call it like a prototypical size for an NFL tackle. Definitely checks that box, and he moves really well within that. Couple things though that I'd like to see him improve. He dips his head upon contact in run defense. It's something that as he's moving downhill, if he can stay with his head up more, he can be a more engaging and effective run blocker. He's so technically sound in pass protection and with his use of hands that I think if he can kind of translate that technical aspect to run blocking, he will be, all that much better. And with that, he also doesn't necessarily have like the strength that you'd like to see there. He is pretty good at walling off defenders, but he's not a people mover by say. He's just not a physically imposing guy, but athletic player, one that understands how to use his hands, and kind of that combination of things pushes him pretty darn high up in my list. Like I said, top 3 in a really strong class. And then we get to number 2, which for some people might be a little bit of a surprise, and that is Caden Proctor. I know a lot of major sites and other analysts have Proctor as their number 1 offensive tackle and religiously a top 10 to 15 player, I'd say, from kind of what I've seen from Mock Draft Database and NFL Draft Buzz. And I have him graded really highly. Once again, I really like him. I think that there are a lot of really good things he brings to the game. With him, probably the biggest note or the most noteworthy thing about him is his size. He is 6'7" and 369 pounds. 369 pounds. Believe it or not, he is up 9 pounds. Between his sophomore year and this year. It's like by design, Alabama is putting that weight on him. And you hear 369 and you might say, man, that is huge. And flashes of DeJuan Jones or the body type, he wasn't as tall, but the body type of like a nose tackle might come up. And realistically, with Proctor, he wears the weight very well. He's not, putting on bad weight. I think that because he's 6'7", he warrants the ability to wear some more LBs than most guys in this class. And he, regardless of that, wears them actually fairly well. So with that, he is, in pass pro especially, he's a wall. You cannot get past this guy. A remarkable job of just getting his hands on a defender, whether they're a power rusher that traditionally go through players, or if they're a speed rusher. He does a great job of consistently getting his hands on those players. And the minute he's locked on, he's not letting go. You're not going to go through him. He's got strong hands. You're not going to get around him. He is, as I wrote down, he is a brick wall. Maybe one or two sets I've seen where he gets pushed off his anchor, and that's going to be more from just a loss of leverage. Like I said, 6'7", you can see that. But this guy is going to be about one of the toughest players to go through that you will see really in any draft class, and especially this one. He, in run defense, is exactly what you would think, just a imposing player. He eliminates defenders when going downhill. He has really strong hands that are able to grasp on and sustain blocks, and more so that mentality comes up again where he is looking to not just sustain but finish the blocks. He wants to put players into the ground. He looks for it and relishes that. But you could probably guess with that he of kind of all of the strengths that he has, the weakness that he has is going to just be his play speed and his ability to match and mirror edge rushers that have the speed element of the game. Like I said, if he gets a hold of them, they're not going to go anywhere. But he gave up probably more pressures than I would think, and definitely more sacks. He gave up 3 sacks this year, and 14 pressures, which are, to be fair, both phenomenal numbers. He had a really good pass blocking efficiency, but it's just that element that there's an, I don't want to say easy because it's not easy, but there is a clear way of beating him, and that is going to be with a speed rusher off the edge. And it doesn't even need to necessarily be counter moves. Obviously, Proctor is a seasoned vet. He understands what pass rush plans look like, and he knows how to set for them. But there are some athletic limitations that will allow edge rushers, if they are quick enough and savvy enough, to get around him and get to the quarterback at times. So with that, you definitely want to see some elements of that improve. Maybe it is shedding some weight. I think he could definitely stand to lose some. Like I said, that's not a bad amount of weight. But I think with that, and there's also been snaps where I think his conditioning is just a little bit under what you'd like it to be. That if he were to play more at 349 even, which is still massive, that 20-pound difference will give him a little bit quicker of a step. It'll give him the ability to stay in a little bit better condition as the season drags on and as drives become quite long. So Caden Proctor, a just imposing offensive tackle, definitely a player that you're going to hear his name with some really high buzz and high praise. He comes in at number 2 on my list. But my number 1 offensive tackle, and probably one of my favorite players I've watched thus far, I'll definitely be labeling him a my guy. That's going to be Caleb Tiernan. I spelled his name wrong on the graphic. I apologize. Caleb Tiernan out of Northwestern University. So Tiernan comes in once again. He's got that frame that you love to see. 6'7", maybe a little bit taller, but he knows how to play with good leverage. 329 pounds. Just definitely a guy that he looks like he's built in a lab for the position. He's a stellar pass protector. He understands how to utilize that length. He has a really sound anchor, and technically he knows how to use his hands to keep defenders at bay. Got good flexibility that allows him to get down and be able to set that anchor. It's definitely not to the level of like a Caden Proctor anchor. I don't think anyone's will be, but it's good enough where he understands what he needs to do. Like I said, he has really good hands. He's technically sound. He moves very well for his size and just does all of the things that you want to see him be able to do to be an effective left tackle at the next level. In addition to that, he's a punishing run defender. He's a player that knows how to move out into space, or he knows how to pull, or he knows how to just take the guy in front of him and position his body to create a hole to move him off his spot. All the elements of his game, you can tell, have a good amount of technical refinement to them. Couple negatives, as always, with him being that 329 is a little bit susceptible to speed rushes, and he's not like the best athlete in this class. He's good, especially for his size, but he can be beat around the arch. And then he needs to have a little bit more dominant of a punch. So, like I said, I like his hand work and his hand placement, but I want to see him have a stronger punch, like that initial move to kind of get defenders off their spot. I thought could have been a little bit better, and with that as well, in run game, I'd like to see him sustain his blocks, maybe a little bit more. He's also going to be a little bit older of a prospect. He's going to be 23 on draft night. Not super old, especially with offensive linemen. They can play into their 30s. And with that, it might be something that teams don't even consider, but definitely an element that kind of popped up and I noted down as well. So Caleb Tiernan, a guy that I think is easily being slept on just because of how complete of a player he has. Good athleticism with a strong frame and strong build, and then just technically he understands what's going on. He's definitely going to be, for me, a hot name, and I hope a name that starts to rise a little bit more throughout draft cycles. I think he deserves every bit of first round buzz as we start to look at the start of the 2025 college football season and start getting some of those early predictions out there. But that is my top 10 offensive tackles for the 2025 Summer Scouting Series for the 2026 NFL Draft. To kind of run 1 through 10 from those, it's going to be Caleb Tiernan, Caden Proctor, Francis Mauigoa, Xavier Chaplin, Caleb Lomu, Spencer Frano, Isaiah World, Gennings Dunker, Emil Wagner, and then finally Blake Miller. As always, if you guys have any thoughts on this, please share them. Share whether it be via comments, sharing on Twitter, and expressing what you guys think of my takes to these, any differences. Love to hear what you guys have to say. But that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Weekly Huddle. Appreciate you hanging out with us. If you're enjoying the football talk, please, once again, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming up next. As always, you can keep up with the show here on YouTube by searching the Weekly Huddle, or you can follow it on Twitter at Weekly Huddle. You can find me also on Twitter at NFL Draft _Weston if you want to see more of my takes and scouting notes as I start breaking down players and sharing out clips and thoughts in the 140 characters that I'm allowed. Thank you so much for watching along. Catch you next time.